Welcome into Out of Order, everyone. My name is Ben Mayer.
My name is Anthony Buono.
And today we are going to be talking about new exercises that the Chinese military ran around Taiwan in response to the inauguration of their new president. So it was 2 days after the inauguration, and the Chinese People's Liberation Army, the PLA, they executed large military drills around the island. These included drills by their Navy and with their Air Force. So China calls Taiwan's new president a separatist, and it claimed that the drills were a warning against positioning the island any further from the mainland. China has already, they have built up this new president lie of Taiwan as like in the ranks of the biggest separatists or rebels of Taiwan's history against China.
No, yeah.
Yeah, so the posturing here is already extremely hostile.
And these all PLA actions, this all comes after the United States and Taiwan did joint military operations on the eve of the president's inauguration of Taiwan, right?
Exactly.
So it's almost like the United States was knowing that the PLA was going to be doing these types of things, preempted it, showed their own strength, flexed their own muscles. Now the PLA is flexing those muscles back.
Yeah, exactly. It does seem like things are escalating, which is scary. But I think the most interesting question is, do these drills matter? Because you see news about drills like this all the time. The ones that come to my mind most obviously are North Korea, that always likes to fire missiles, kind of as if it's going to attack South Korea. It hasn't yet, so that's nice. But there are a few reasons that I think these drills might matter. And as far as what they're showing about the PLA's capabilities.
That is the really interesting question there. And I think I want to start there because what the commentary that I was hearing from the military community is, if China does a military operation into Taiwan, the way that they did this drill, it will be the most obvious and telegraphed amphibious assault that we've ever seen, right?
Yeah.
It'll be so absolutely painfully obvious that it's gonna happen, that the element of surprise really isn't gonna be available for the Chinese government unless they do something different from how their strategy was in this drill, right?
Yeah.
That's what the military advisors were suggesting. This drill is a very telegraphed assault. It's very obvious.
It is. I do wonder, and I have some points to push back on that, but even just hearing what you're saying, is there any chance that the fact that they're doing these drills and now might be doing them consistently, and I'll get into that, does it mean that instead of it being telegraphed, it's the Taiwanese and the Americans might think it's a drill, and then they're actually able to go in?
That's a really good strategy.
It's possible.
If they keep doing these drills in that type of way, the Americans and the Taiwanese are never going to know when it's the real thing.
Exactly. And the Chinese are setting up to make these drills a repeated thing because last year they had a similar, although lower scaled drill that was called Joint Sword 2023. And this one they called Joint Sword 2024A.
Ooh.
So what 2024A is implying is
there's going to be a B.
There's going to be a B in 2024. So another one could happen before the end of this year, or multiple before the end of this year. And plus, this could continue for years. So it's setting us up for the expectation that more drills are going to happen, which means, again, they might catch us off guard for, an hour, right? Or even a few minutes. Everything that I've read says that China wants every minute it can get of a delayed response from the U.S. if it has an amphibious invasion of
China's
Taiwan.
going to have about 48 hours to make their progress.
Exactly.
If they invade Taiwan, they have 48 good hours of limited U.S. response where it's just the Taiwanese holding the defenses, and then that's the best time for the Chinese to take advantage and take Taipei.
Yeah, I would say 48 hours if they're lucky, if everything goes according to plan. So there are a few, the Chinese focused on a few regions around Taiwan. And I think each of them has a clear meaning to it. The first was a region in the north, which demonstrates their ability to strike Taipei, which is closest to the northern side of the island. Taipei is the capital of Taiwan. It's where all of the political leadership lives. There are drills that they did in the west that showed their ability to block Taiwan's biggest port, which would really cut off their energy supplies if people were trying to ship in there. And then they did drills in the east, which showed the Navy's ability to blockade Taiwan from help from the Americans.
Yeah. And this blockade This blockade, of course, going to war in Taiwan isn't just about, there aren't just military and political ramifications. There's deep economic ramifications.
Yes.
And so the Business Insider reported on an analysis that was done. What would happen if Taiwan got invaded? What happens to the global economy? Well, they estimate that the global economy will shrink by $10 trillion, which is about 10% of the global GDP.
That's crazy.
If Taiwan gets invaded, it's a 10% shrinking in the GDP. If we go, if we localize it, it's a 20% reduction in the entire Southeast Asia's economy. 23% reduction in Korea.
I wonder if that includes like how China will be cut off from the Western economic infrastructure.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Probably
it was Bloomberg who did the study that they were considering the economic modeling. So I assume it does.
Yes.
But I think also the big part of this is Taiwan's obvious role in exporting so many inputs to electronic goods.
Yeah.
And then it's just like if you're cut off from those types of inputs,
you just wreck supply chains
completely. Up and down. Because these semiconductors, they're not just used, as semiconductors in your graphics card or whatever. It's not just for that. It's all the machinery that are used to make the cars, not just the ones that are in the cars, right? It's at every point of the supply chain needs the semiconductor.
Everything that's like past the probably 80th, even 75th percentile of like high techness.
Yeah.
That's coming out of Taiwan.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a lot of shit that's going to be screwed over. The last thing that I wanted to go on about is like any other reasons? Doesn't this just telegraph China's moves? Like these drills, especially when they are so well organized, isn't it just giving away, like you said earlier, isn't it just giving away exactly what they're going to do? I think that economic damage, that economic risk is why China is still hoping that they are looking for a way to reintegrate Taiwan without the invasion.
They're trying to scare them straight. They're trying to frighten them into running back into the CCP's arms. Like, that's what they're trying to do.
Exactly. They want to, as long as they can tell that story to themselves, as long as they can convince themselves that it's possible that they could aggressively persuade Taiwan back into their arms instead of needing to fight for it.
They're going to take that. They're going to try for that opportunity every chance they get.
Exactly.
It's concerning to me because the Chinese population has been so inundated with rhetoric and political bluster that Taiwan is Chinese. Taiwan is a part of the CCP and everything, and it belongs to us, and it's our rightful thing. But what happens like 2, 3, 4 years from now when Taiwan is still not integrated?
Yeah.
How does that play with the radical portions of the Chinese populace now that have been taught and totally convinced that Taiwan needs to come back and that they're all separatists and they're painting the leaders of Taiwan as evil enemies of the state, right?
Yes.
How does that play with the populace going forward?
Like, are you backing yourself into a war?
Yes. Yes. It's almost like the members of the Communist Party are trying to convince their people to be ready to go to war, but that makes it more difficult for the CCP to ever change their mind because now all their people are going to be pro-war. And that's going to be really, really hard to back away from at a certain point.
It is. It reminds me of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, not because of political pressure, but because of demographic pressure, that they knew that they wanted Ukraine, and they have known that they wanted to plug geographic gaps that sit to their west and to their south. And Russia's been on an expansionist kind of tirade for over a decade now to do that. And Russia's demographics are terrible, about on par with China's. China's are arguably worse. And they weren't going to have enough men to field a functional army.
Well, that's what I said before on one of our first episodes. It's actually one of our videos that went the most viral on Instagram back in the day when we first started.
Okay.
It was talking about how this is China's last possible gasp, this next 10 years.
Yep.
This is when they're going to have the manpower to run a war in a way that's going to be effective against the United States.
Yeah.
This is their last decade. They only have a couple more years.
Yes.
And if they want to take Taiwan, they really have to do it by 2027, 2029. They only have a couple more years now.
Yes, they do.